The chairman of the House Oversight and Reform Committee, Elijah Cummings, has passed away at the age of 68. CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill. Nancy, what do we know about how Congressman Cummings died? Because he certainly had been absent for a while. There was a 2-week recess. The expectation was that he was going to return after that, and he didn't.
Yes, he's been in and out of the hospital over the past year. He actually had a heart valve replacement surgery in 2017. He had knee surgery last year, and then he was dealing with a bacterial infection from that knee surgery. So he's been very open about the health struggles that he has faced over the past year or so, getting around on an electric scooter most of the time in his final months. He is being remembered by lawmakers on both sides of the aisle this morning as a giant of the House who can't be replaced.
Elijah Cummings dedicated most of his life to public service. An attorney and former state lawmaker, he was elected to the U.S. Congress in 1996.
We are the greatest country in the world. We are the ones that can go anywhere in the world and save people.
The Baltimore native and son of sharecroppers quickly became one of the most powerful orators in the Democratic Party.
It is so painful. I can't even begin to tell you.
When Democrats won back the House in 2018, Cummings became chair of the powerful House Oversight Committee, which roots out fraud and mismanagement in the administration.
A child is sitting in their own feces, can't take a shower. Come on, man. What's that about?
It's a job reserved for those who won't back down from a fight. When Cummings was hit with a barrage of angry tweets, he defended his city, not himself.
I want people to come to Baltimore. We are a great city. We really are. We really are. I do not have time for people who want to trash our city.
Cummings was open about his recent health problems and grew increasingly reflective during his final months.
A lot of people do not understand where my passion comes from. It comes out of pain, passion, purpose.
So, Nancy, he's been in Congress since 1996. What's some of the legislation that he will be remembered for?
Well, he was a major champion of gun reform. He was a major champion of changes to drug policy. And most of all, he was really viewed as sort of the moral center in the Democratic Party in the House, someone who could make that closing argument for a variety of bills on the House floor. And one of the few lawmakers on the Democratic side that leadership turned to again and again to play that role, because he could deliver that speech like almost no one else.
And are we hearing from his colleagues? I know it's pretty early in the morning. Many people may be just waking up to this news.
They are, but this is really a punch in the gut, as Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, told me just a few minutes ago. James Clyburn of South Carolina put out a statement saying, "Today we have lost a giant. There will not be another like him." He's someone who was simultaneously very gruff, but also very kind. He was sort of like John McCain in that way. He was very open with reporters, but not afraid to tell them if he thought that they had asked him a stupid question. When I was corresponding with him a couple of months ago while he was coming under fire from President Trump, at one point, as I asked him one too many questions via text, he wrote back in all caps, "Now I must get my rest." And I said, "Okay, sorry, I'll stop asking you questions now." So, he was someone who was very easy to talk to, but also wasn't afraid to push back, and occupied that rare position where he was really respected by lawmakers from both sides of the aisle, and had strong relationships with some lawmakers from the other side of the aisle, like Mark Meadows of North Carolina, who certainly would seem to be a strange bedfellow, if you will, for Elijah Cummings. Elijah was a fiery progressive, and Meadows an equally fiery conservative.
I think you mentioned that you spoke to some of his colleagues, including Senator Chuck Schumer. What did he have to say?
Well, he said, first of all, that voice, no one else had that voice, that baritone that caught your attention, whether he was working himself up into a stem winder or just delivering moral condemnation in a way that only Elijah Cummings could. He also said that even though he is the leader of the Democratic Party in the Senate, he also often turned to Elijah Cummings, a House member, for his views on politics, his views of the shifting dynamics of the Democratic Party in Maryland and Senate races there, because of his unique insight. They only overlapped for 2 years in the House, back when Schumer was a House member before he came to the Senate. But clearly, Cummings is someone whose insight and whose guidance was relied upon not only by Schumer, but by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who I'm sure will have a lot to say about his passing as well today.
Yeah, certainly when you saw him speak, particularly on these committees, and maybe it has to do with his experience as an attorney, but there was definitely a certain amount of weight to his presentation. He was passionate without being emotional, and still particularly measured, especially when it came to this whole impeachment inquiry. He deferred to Nancy Pelosi. He was not one of those Democrats who were, calling for an impeachment sort of right off the bat. And he was the chair of the Oversight Committee, one of the committees very instrumental in this impeachment inquiry. So without him, what sort of impact can we expect?
It is going to be a huge loss, and the party is going to have to figure out how to fill that power vacuum, that very important role at a very critical time. Obviously, they knew that Cummings was ailing, but the news of his passing still comes as a shock, and they will have to put someone else in that position very quickly. I can't stress how much thought goes into who leads the House Oversight Committee, particularly when the House and the White House are led by opposing parties. That person has got to be someone who is not afraid to go after the administration, someone who will not back down. Think of other people who have held that role: Trey Gowdy, Jason Chaffetz, Darrell Issa. These are all individuals who frankly, are not afraid of mixing it up with an administration of the opposing party. And Cummings was always a natural choice for that role because, as you've mentioned, he was someone who relished the combat, but who was also very serious about policy and about government wrongdoing, and took his job very, very seriously.
Yeah, definitely. Nancy, thank you so much for your insight.
You're welcome.